Welcome back to Follow the Rabbit, where we decode cultural phenomena and follow rabbit holes around current developments and trends and see where they lead us, all with the idea to help you update your mental models of the world right now. And as it becomes spring here in Berlin, as you can see, the sun is out, but the gray is, at least for the moment, over. All of Germany gets very excited for asparagus season, obviously. But I personally even more excited about the upcoming strawberry season. It's a great season, especially here in Berlin. We got Karl's Erdbeerhof in the northeast of Germany, and when strawberry season arrives, then there are all these like little booths that look like a strawberry are popping up all around Berlin, starting selling tons of strawberries. And it's always fascinating for me, like how in the beginning, like for like 250 grams, you pay like 6-7 euros, and then over the season it becomes cheaper and cheaper, and by the end you can like pay 7 euros for like 2 kilos or something. And they always try to like sell you more, and you're like, what should I do with 4 kilos of strawberries?
Well, I mean, I guess we'll see what the prices are this season.
Yeah, well, it's going to be interesting this season. Because today we want to talk about strawberries. It's the hot cultural it item, the thing to have. Obviously, because it's very, very healthy. It's one of the best fruits you can eat. Also, for a little bit of West Wing trivia, as we've learned from President Bartlett, it is the only fruit who has the seeds on the outside. But nevertheless, it's become a meme, like a viral idea, because somebody that we already know of is selling $19 strawberries, and not more like a few strawberries, one strawberry. Igor, what the hell is happening? I think like what the hell seems to be the opening line.
This is like, what the hell?
Which is quite good. What the hell?
Well, I mean, I'm pretty sure, like, I hope everyone who listens appreciates how much he enjoyed fucking with you right now talking about strawberries. And yes, I mean, possible that you have seen it on Instagram or one of those other platforms yourself. It is possible that we consume a different version of Instagram, and so we see other things. And in the case that you have not seen it, there were a couple of videos going pretty viral about people standing in an Erbahan. And Erbahan is something that we touched upon last year. It's a high-end luxury supermarket that makes unreasonable profits for their owners and has become a cultural phenomena in and on itself. People line up to buy extraordinarily expensive smoothies. So if you want to understand what is up with Erdogan, you can listen to our previous episode. Suffice to say that I think the only place where this could have like now happened and bubbled up was Erdogan, because it's one of those places that people go to both to get extraordinary exclusive products, but also get a kick out of being flabbergasted by the fact that somebody is selling something so strange and so expensive at the same time.
It's also very LA.
It is very LA. It's very white LA, let's put it this way. And also very aspiring LA. But anyway, so a couple of videos went viral. Specifically, I found one from a comedian couple who had their kind of like 5 moments of fame by being extremely taken aback by the reality of a $19 strawberry. And obviously, they made, their funny video out of it. It went viral. And the first inclination that I also have, I'm going to be transparent, is like, what the fuck? Like, what? Why would you do that? Like, what is stage of late stage capitalism is this? And it is all of that, but there is a little bit more nuance to it. And I think Johannes is going to take us also a little bit on this journey into the wild and strange reality of the fact that Japan provides not only $19 strawberries, but quite a lot of other food that is extraordinarily expensive.
Yeah, so like looking into this is a story that keeps on giving. And the more like you draw at threads, you've discover really fascinating aspects. And I think it's like the $19 strawberry is going to be a thing that's going to be studied for generations, because it starts with a long, long tradition in Japan about luxury food. Apparently, even samurais used to give prized melons to their shoguns in the 14th century. And since then, it has always been the case that different seasons that are very connected to gifting luxury fruits to others. And it's very much connected to cliche Japanese approach to everything, like going way overboard with it. And they do the same for food. So the whole process is meticulously focused on quality and perfection. They have cultivated farming techniques that are super obsessive to achieve this perfection. Fruits are often hand-pollinated, individual massaged, given hats to prevent sunburn, and grown on one fruit per vine to channel maximum nutrition.
We'll find a photo to display in here to about strawberries and hats.
So they're like $17 apples. There have been grapes, the ruby Roman grapes, that sold for roughly $11,000 at a seasonal auction. There are melons who have been super popular. And so they have this long-standing tradition of gifting that, and it actually has also grown even before Erawan. It had grown beyond Japan, like especially in Asia. It seems to be a big thing. Instance for Chinese New Year, they would starting to gift fruits. And this is just like, so this is in other parts of the world, this is very much a thing. And then it's interesting how that ties in all other things, but go ahead.
Yeah, and the interesting, like I think, like there are a lot of interesting. We'll be using interesting as a word way too much in this episode. There is a fascinating, see what I did there, aspect about the fact that the $19 strawberry doesn't actually provide that much margin for everyone compared to other products, and that is because it's just ridiculously difficult to actually get it to LA in time before it's not a strawberry anymore. So they go to extraordinary lengths to transport that. Now, whether this is justified is a whole different argument. I think what we found really compelling in understanding and really diving into this, that there is a disconnect in a way between how Western cultures and how Japan are approaching this. As Johannes said, like there is a long tradition of really expensive, but basically the price tag is something that happens after, right? The value for specifically grown food is what is actually driving the motivation for Japanese culture. So they didn't start doing this with the idea of selling a $19 strawberry at everyone. They did it out of the commitment to a craft of achieving growing the best possible strawberry. And we see this, I mean, I've heard this many times from actually quite different people, is there is the best version of everything basically in Japan. Like you go and eat the best pizza there, you go and drink the best wine out there, you go and drink the best whiskey over there. And I think there is almost like an fetishized obsession in Western cultures around the idea of Japanese crafted products. And it goes through different layers and different kind of craftsmanship. We can start with, fashion, where Rei Kawaguchi and Comme des Garçons have like an extraordinary kind of attention that they enjoy. We see that with other produce or food things. Like suddenly there's Wagyu meat in many Berlin restaurants. There are a lot of restaurants who are offering fish are pointing out that it's been slaughtered with Ikejime methodology, which is a Japanese way of probably pronounce it really wrong. The Japanese way of making sure that the fish dies in a specific way, which changes quite substantially how it ages. So there's like a way of aging fish because of how it was slaughtered. And I have to say, like, there are stories about Japanese knife manufacturers who have 5-year waiting lists because both Chinese and Western customers have ordered everything that's available. And that kind of craft, that kind of dedication doesn't scale. So that's another aspect that's really hard for us to kind of like comprehend, is like there is actually a limitation to how much of it is achievable. And every time somebody tries to kind of skip that part, it becomes just random, not that interesting product. But the dedication that Japanese culture, at least in our minds, has compared to Western cultures, I think that it plays a very strong role in our way of projecting also attention into those things, right?
Yeah, I think it's interesting how like Japanese culture and approach to craft here is like collaborating with the Western idea of attention. That really find fascinating. Just to give you like what Igor just said, like to give you some details on that. So how this all comes together. So this strawberry is of the rare Tochigi variety, grown on a small farm in Japanese strawberry kingdom. That's the Tochigi Prefecture.
It's like cars are dope, but nice.
Yeah, there you go. These strawberries are cultivated in limited quantities with intense care. It's based on 7 years of crossbreeding that went into the developing the variety. By the time one reaches Los Angeles, it's been handpicked at peak ripeness, carefully packed, and air freighted within 20 to 48 hours of harvest. So within almost 24 hours from harvesting, it's available in Erewhon. The logistics alone are expensive. LEMI is the distributor. They say that the air shipment cost per berry is nearly as high as the fruit itself. And then you have to add import duties, handling, and a bespoke packaging, of course. And the costs start making sense. This is the interesting, like Igor said, really interesting. This is actually, it actually costs $19. I'm careful about saying it's worth $19, but it costs $19. And the interesting way, it costs the same, if not more, in Japan. Also because like the favorable yen exchange rate, it actually might be more expensive in Japan to have the strawberry than LAA, which is really fascinating. So essentially the store is passing along the inherent costs of production and import rather than an arbitrary markup. This is really fascinating. And then it comes together with the whole, like, what does it do? So this is the supply side, what Igor just described, like this strong focus on craft, this long tradition, this approach to that. And then it comes together with what does the price do to the consumer. And I find that really interesting, like how it's all the ideas of signaling. What do I show with that? What does it say about my taste, about my status in society? That I think is super fascinating.
You know what? It reminds me also of something, of another Aaron Sorkin show. You quoted the West Wing. It reminded me of Studio 60, his follow-up show around like a comedy show, not unlike Saturday Night Live. And there is a quote by the executive running the equivalent of NBC saying, "Content is king, but distribution pays for the king's mortgage." And I think this is pretty much also a really good example of that. Like, obviously, the distribution wouldn't exist without the $19 strawberry, but the $19 strawberry wouldn't also exist without the ability to be able to move in such fast way, both culturally and physically. So
yeah, nice.
With no airplanes, no strawberry that can be in LA, but also the attention kind of thing is very much connected to that.
Yeah.
But for me, like going into this, the question became, well, what is it that we do find so interesting about this ability of Japan to produce repeatedly things that seemingly are very Japanese in a sense that, and I think like the first time I kind of like discovered it was, I keep forgetting the name, the story about the sushi guy.
Hero Dreams of Sushi.
Hero Dreams of Sushi. And I mean, there are so many things in this documentary about Hiro, him running this very exclusive sushi place. But there are so many things in sense that him working at the age of over 80 and doing still sushi, but also, his son being only able to go shopping for fish himself alone at the age of 50 plus or something like that. Those seemed like manifestations of dedication that are incomprehensible in Western cultures because we don't tend to stay on for that long. We don't tend to commit to those things. I don't think it's quite true. I mean, there's a long history, obviously, also in Europe of, apprenticeship programs and so far. But at least from a value perspective, we tend to not see it as much right now as we used to. But we like to buy. And I think that's also why, luxury brands are booming again in a way, because people buying into craft, even if they don't quite understand it. And I have this really loose theory of the more disembodied we are through our digital experiences and the chaos of everyday life, the more we crave the kind of physical embodiment of commitment. That is expressed through a $19 strawberry or a specifically slaughtered fish, because we then also start seeing that story of an alternative way of living that we romanticize, but we also find very alluring as a kind of like an alternative to, a fully digital experience like Mark Zuckerberg and maybe others are imagining it. So there is this tension that also then kind of manifests obviously in a variety of ways on social media when people interact with it, because again, my first reaction was also not of understanding. I will happily admit that. But the more we kind of spend time with understanding what's happening here, the more you can see it as an artifact of so many cultural phenomena being intertwined in one very expensive strawberry.
Yeah, and I think that moves us a bit away from the Japanese origin and dedication to craft, and more into the how the attention economy works. Where I also think it went viral, and by this moving away from the whole craft perspective into just like what you just said. Like you hear a $19 strawberry and you have a reaction to that, if you want to or not. And if you shake your head at the notion of a $19 strawberry, you are very much part of that. You have a reaction.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't work with your values. And so it's an identity statement for you to say, this is ridiculous. This is outrageous. In the same way that people are like, oh, I would like to try it. It's all part of like how we deal with identity. And just to look at it a bit, the obvious thing is why this works so well. So in the attention economy, extremes and novelties are garner the most engagement. That's just how it works. And a $20 price tag for a single strawberry is perfect for this, because the headlines write themselves, and it just works. This is a mix of shock, of aspiration, of participatory content. So you can just you can react to that. You can do your own thing. Also, to be clear, visually, a strawberry is basically made for Instagram and TikTok. It just it's a clear object, very red, very, very good to look at. People are tasting it, so they have an emotional thing. You can see the reactions in their faces. It just works really well. And then the outrage and astonishment are the perfect thing to have something go viral. And everybody wants to react to that. And then it's a self-propelling thing where you see others reacting to a $19 strawberry, and then you're, okay, I have to try it myself. I have to find out. And the crazy thing about all of this is they are constantly sold out. It works tremendously well, and it like it all usually does with like artificial. And this it's actually not artificial, but restriction or limitation. But they're constantly sold out. It works. They're a cultural phenomenon.
I'm gonna admit it. I would buy it.
There you go.
I mean, not constantly. Don't get me wrong. The podcasting life doesn't pay quite as well, but I would. I mean, this is also again this manifestation of certain way of how culture is created now. It's not like the need to experience something for yourself and document it for what it is. We see that in everything. We see that in running clubs. If you haven't run and documented and photographed, like, doesn't really like, have you even been running? All of those things are now only happening. I think like, I don't know. I mean, the Pixar didn't happen is obviously predates Instagram. I don't know. We should look this up. I don't know who actually coined it, but it's very much like in the lineage of things that Postman was writing about. You know, we are amusing ourselves to death. Is that if there is no documentation, if that documentation only lives inside of you, is it actually real? And here's the other thing, though. What you didn't find out about the strawberry through a video of the farm where it is grown. You did find out about it through two guys from Berlin telling you about a story that happened in a LA supermarket. And I think there is something to be said about that it's not about how it's grown. It's not about really, it's about the idea of how it's grown. We don't really care that much whether or not it is actually worthwhile, because at the point where we discover it in the supermarket, it becomes in and on itself the authority of the supermarket, in this case Erdogan, to dictate that price. And if you don't trust Erdogan to provide the reasonable product for that price tag, you probably are not going to buy it. But I would also argue you would probably not be in Erdogan standing and looking at things. So there is a whole thing about how the relationship between authority and what we're actually interested in this case. But at the same time, I think, and I hope we kind of touched a little bit at least on it, it's fascinating because that illusion is only possible because somebody actually put the effort in, right? Because without the effort, there is also not the illusion of narrative and all of that. So I think that relationship is also really fascinating.
There's one thing that really fascinates me in the whole virality of it. A lot of the videos of people trying the $19 strawberry have the title of "I tried the $19 strawberry, so you don't have to," which is some psychological mindfuck, because everybody who sees the video is like, I have to try this because I see the reaction of the people who try this, so I have to try it too, because also I want to be part of a cultural phenomenon. I will say I took part of it. I can tell my kids about the $19 strawberry. This is so fascinating to me, how like it has the opposite effect of what the title is saying.
Reverse psychology.
And then there's the whole connection to the topic we've been talking about last season of health and wellness as a luxury. And I mean, this is how we talked about Erewhon, because it is first and foremost an organic and health supermarket, especially with the notion of health as luxury or health also as status signaling, these kind of things. And a strawberry is in itself a very healthy fruit, but it goes into a really interesting part. And there's like, so there are different like ideas here in behavior and the socio-cultural context that's connected to that. We can obviously start with conspicuous consumption, as an old notion, but I found the topic of performative consumption really interesting. I think this is really what the videos are showing us. They perform the consumption, and this is part of how that works. And it also works in a very special context of this health idea.
But I mean, they also perform the outrage, right?
Yeah.
Because
yeah, exactly.
It is all performative to the end that what you post is steered by your knowledge of what your audience will react to. At this point, we are basically very trained by those systems to produce the kind of content that will manifest the largest possible engagement. And if I'm a comedian and I see a $19 strawberry, it's obviously a very easy way of kind of picking up steam. But the funny part is that it would have been probably far funnier in the long run if they would have figured out how to make a bit about a $19 strawberry that is like basically arguing why you should have one.
Yeah.
Because it's the cheap laughs really to be outraged about it. And while being outraged about something that is so obviously not affordable for most people in the world is correct, it's not necessarily a good way of dealing with why is this happening.
There's also, I think they're connected to that, and especially with the outrage, there's the whole notion of the carbon footprint of this, of the sustainability of this.
For sure.
There's a lot of interesting ethical discussions because it seems like there's like a controversy between the sustainability and showing your luxury and saying, and where these are not like the same thing, but then you go back and forth because there is aspect of it. It's super transparent. You know exactly where this food comes from, how was it grown. You only eat one. So there is some ideas of sustainability in there, but others make it completely obnoxious to think about this as a sustainable thing. So
it's transparently crazy.
Yeah.
But it's funny, I mean, to also kind of round it off now, I think there is, and I don't know, I would like to say that I don't know if that applies here, but a lot of the arguments around making something so exclusive is based on this notion that if we find out how to make the best thing, we will learn how to make other things better. And it's very tied to kind of like an idea of trickle down economics where you're like, if I like, that's the argument why so many car manufacturers, for example, invested in Formula One, because their notion is like, this is very much actually about research and development that it will then kind of make everything else better. And I don't know if that's actually the case with the strawberries, but we see that a lot in kind of this notion of exclusivity, in that not in the price tag necessarily, but in that obsession with perfection that is by default irrational. And I think there is a borderline kind of relationship between a business notion of this, but also almost an artistic expression of an obsession. Nobody, I don't know, nobody really discussed with Joseph Beuys about his kind of need to use a lot of rocks and space in a gallery, because in an artistic context, we accept that it is necessary to do things that are irrational. And I think to a certain extent, the strawberry falls into that category. But other things that are hiding behind that idea of exclusivity are certainly really not. So also important to a way of distinguishing between those two.
So we have been talking about the $19 strawberry for half an hour, and I think that's pretty much all we should invest into that. On the other hand, I hope it became clear why we're fascinated with this and why we think it's important. If you hear of like a cultural artifact, like something like that, it makes sense to dig into that. And because as we only like scratch the surface with this one, it shows you how much things are coming together here, from Japanese craft to attention economy, virality, sustainability, health and wellness as a luxury. All of these things are combined, and there's no clear it's good, it's bad. As I said, if you're shaking your head at this, you are part of the game. Like, this is what the outrage about this is, also part of that. And I think that's really helpful to understand our world a little bit better.
So in the future, something really triggers you, but you can't be bothered to investigate. Just send us a link and we'll do it for you.
There you go. With that, I'd say we wrap it up for today. Thanks for coming along. I hope you have a great strawberry season in the next couple of weeks when it starts. Gonna be a bit more price sensitive about it, I guess.
You will find strawberries not that expensive anymore.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. You're like, oh, I'm not having one. I'm having 10.
Yeah.
Just such an indulgence.
This video was not sponsored by a strawberry company.
We should get Karl's Erdbeerdorf as the first sponsor. I think that would be appropriate.
All right,
really
jokes aside, we appreciate you listening in. If you find this interesting, funny, or triggering, please recommend this to someone else. It does really help. And we'll hear you next week.
Yeah, and for all you Germans, enjoy your Asperger season. Have a good one.